Hi, this is David at Mash IT. Following on from our first impressions video and having a few days to really get some hands-on time with this Legion 5 Pro, tonight we're going to be doing the full review. Now this is going to be one of the most sought after gaming laptops of 2021 and it's rarely in stock due to all the shortages we've faced this year. We ordered this unit back in March, but it's been certainly worth the wait. So this unit is a 6-inch laptop in a 15.6-inch chassis. You can configure it with either a 6-core or an 8-core Ryzen CPU and a 3060 or a 3070 RTX graphics card. As a lot of people seem to be reviewing the higher spec models, we've opted to get in the base model with a Ryzen 5600H 6-core CPU and an RTX 3060 6GB GPU. It also came with 8GB of RAM and 512GB of SSD at £1,100 in the UK. So we wanted to see if this base model is also worth a buy. The laptop chassis itself is very similar to last year's Legion 15, but they've now improved the materials that they've used in this actual chassis. The lid and the base plate are now metal. The laptop deck is plastic, and as is the touchpad, but the machine itself feels really solid with no creaking and a great feeling hinge. At the front of the laptop is a nice lip that allows for very easy opening. Now this is something I've really appreciated after having struggled with the Razer Blade 17, which is always a pain to actually open the laptop. On the top of the lid, we now have the Legion Y logo. This does light up, and a lot of people have complained about this logo because it doesn't look very professional. You can turn this light off if it's something that does bother you, and many people will often put a skin on the back of their laptops if they really don't like the aesthetics of it. Talking of the aesthetics of this laptop, they've gone for a very slightly gamer approach with this machine, which gives it still a very good look, the actual laptop itself. There's not too much RGB on the laptop, so it's very plain, but it does have some quite big grills at the back where it pumps the hot air out, which does give it that gamer vibe. So looking at the ports on this laptop, it's got a great array of ports, which is something that's really good, especially on a gaming laptop. If we look at the left-hand side, we've got a USB-C port and a headset jack. Now, bear in mind, because this is AMD Ryzen, there are no Thunderbolt ports, so this is pure USB-C. If we look to the right-hand side of the laptop, we've got a webcam switch. Now, this will allow you to disable your webcam completely, so if you're worried about privacy, it's quite nice to be able to lock that off. Then we've got a standard USB 3 port. And then if we move to the back, this is where the majority of the ports are. We start off from the left to the right. We've got the RJ45 port. We've got a USB-C port. Now this does also support power delivery, and we're going to look at that further on in our deep dive performance video. Then we've got two USB 3s, an HDMI 2.1, then another USB 3. Now this one also supports charging even when the laptop's in sleep, so you can charge your mobile phone or your mouse, whatever. And then finally, we've got the power jack. Now this is the standard Lenovo sort of oblong power connector. The good thing is obviously being Lenovo, being a very popular manufacturer, it's quite easy to pick up spare power packs for these laptops. And then just above the power ports where we've got the symbols for what the ports are, there's also a little LED that tells you whether you're plugged in and whether you're charging or charged on the laptop. Moving on to the keyboard, it's your usual ThinkPad affair with a backlit, well-spaced keys and also a number pad. Typing is a real joy, as it is with most Lenovo laptops. There is a fair amount of flex in the laptop itself around the middle of the keyboard deck, but given that it is a plastic deck and the price of this laptop, I think that is to be expected, and it isn't really noticeable unless you're actually looking for it. And as I mentioned earlier, the touchpad is plastic, but it does feel great to use and the gestures work well. Now unfortunately the speakers are downfiring, and this is a real shame, and it is the same on most gaming laptops. They sound very average. You can use them in a pinch and game sounds are okay, but I wouldn't really want to be sitting there listening to music on them. But obviously, it's very easy to plug in a headset or plug in a decent set of speakers if you're at your desk. Moving up to the screen though, and this is where the laptop excels. It's got a 16-inch 2560 by 1600, 16 by 10, 500 nit display. It's got a 165Hz refresh rate, G-Sync and a muck switch. This is pretty much the holy grail of panels. It's an absolute joy to use for work, being a high DPI screen, but also games are able to push this resolution, especially with this 3060 and 3070. I haven't enjoyed using a screen this much in a long time. The screen is also matte with 500 nits of brightness, making it really usable even outdoors, which is a real pleasure. Now this laptop does have amazing feature set, but the one thing I feel it is missing is Windows Hello in either facial recognition or a fingerprint scanner. But at least this laptop does have a webcam. So this is a test of the webcam and the microphone on the Legion 5 Pro. Moving on to the performance of this machine, I have to say straight away just how impressed I am with it. You can use a hotkey to switch between 3 performance profiles, and when you switch them, the power button changes colours with the profiles, so you can easily see which profile you have selected. You have quiet, balanced and performance modes available. Quiet is fine for office work, but you really won't want to use this one for gaming, as they've severely capped the wattages of the CPU and the GPU. But one thing you will notice with this laptop are the fans are always active. Even on quiet mode, there's a dull hum of the fans constantly whirring away quietly. I don't think it will bother anybody, but the fans don't shut off like they do in other laptops. But the good news is, when you're using this in sort of quiet mode or balanced mode and you're web surfing, the fans don't regularly ramp up like many other laptops on the market. Moving to balance mode, this is a great middle road profile that caps the GPU at 100 watts and the CPU is only throttled a touch, giving you great all-round performance with a slightly quieter fan behaviour. And lastly, the performance mode. This is probably what you're going to want to put it in when you're gaming and gives you completely unthrottled CPU performance and allows the 3060 its full 130 watt TGP. Even when running taxing games, the laptop still doesn't get annoyingly loud. Okay, so we're going to try a bit of gameplay footage now. We're running in performance mode on the Legion 5 Pro with obviously the 3060. We're running at the full resolution 2560 by 1600. High settings, but with textures on medium because obviously we've only got 6 gigabytes of VRAM in here. So let's give it a go. You can see the temperatures obviously get up quite high, 85 odd for the CPU and mid 70s for the GPU, but then stays pretty stable from there, and it isn't loud at all. We'll have to get the decibel meter out in a minute once the fans crank up to full, and I will get my temperature gauge out as well. Right, so even with the 3060, playing at full resolution on Warzone, we're getting 90 to 100 frames per second. It's really quite incredible. I mean, obviously this is obviously the budget option, and we're still getting great temperatures, great frames per second, and this laptop, the keyboard is absolutely cool to the touch. Right, so we've been playing for a little while now. I'm sitting inside, so obviously frames per second are a little bit higher, 122 frames per second with the 3060. Really quite impressive for Warzone. You can see the CPU temperatures are 80 to 85, which is more than acceptable and a lot less than the M15R5 we recently reviewed. And the GPU temperatures are only 72. Now the keyboard feels absolutely cool to the touch, so I'm going to get my temperature gauge out. So the keyboard, the WASD keys are 32 degrees centigrade. That's really cool. If I move over to the middle of the laptop, where it's obviously heating up with the CPU and the GPU, we're getting 36, 37 degrees. Again, it's not uncomfortable to touch. I go to the top of the laptop with 38. And right back down to 30. Now, if I put it at the fan grill at the sides, you can see about 40 degrees shooting at the right-hand side. But when I'm using my mouse, I'm not feeling it over here. Obviously, you'll have your hand right up before you actually feel this heat coming out. Now we're in performance mode. I'm going to use my decibel meter and I'll show you how quiet these fans actually are under load. Mute the game. So full load on performance mode, 49 decibel meters. There's certainly some advantage to buying the base model because obviously with this being the 6-core 5600H and only a 130 watt 3060, this laptop has no problems handling these temperatures. Okay, so now lastly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the graphics settings down and I'm going to change it from the 2560 1600s. I'm going to change it to 1920 by 1200s, just in case you've got a game that can't manage the full resolution of the screen. We're going to see how it looks off mesh, so non-native resolution. We're now at 1200p, and I have to be honest, this looks amazing. This is not native resolution, and it's still looking brilliant. If somebody didn't tell me this wasn't native resolution, I don't think I would notice. And in fairness, I'm not really increasing a lot of frames per second by changing it down to 1200p. Now this review has been mostly positive so far, but I want to touch on my first niggle with this machine, and that's the 300 watt power brick that's supplied. Now I can understand the higher tier models getting a 300 watt power brick, but there's absolutely no way this base model needs 300 watts, and I don't know why they didn't include the much smaller 230 watt charger. Now I will be doing a performance deep dive soon, where I'm going to check its performance on the 230 watt PSU, and also be looking into the USB power delivery, so please make sure you're subscribed if you wish to watch that. The next gripe I have is getting to the laptop's internals. Now it's brilliant that they allow you to upgrade the RAM, the Wi-Fi and the SSDs. They even provide you with a spare screw and heatsink for the second SSD. But wow, this thing is really tough to get the base plate off. I'm going to drop a small video covering the upgrade procedure in the next day or so again, please make sure you're subscribed if you wish to watch that. So with the gripes out of the way, let's talk about the included Vantage software. The Vantage software is what is used to control a lot of the features of this laptop, as well as giving you the option of the hotkeys. The Vantage software is brilliant. It's responsive and it's very quick to load, unlike the Alienware Command Center, which drives me crazy year on year. The Vantage software gives you access to many important features such as changing the mux switch, putting the monitor overdrive on or off, and that's a really handy feature if you're gaming, changing the primary functions of the F key, and many more options. Now Lenovo have been using this Vantage software for a while now, and they've improved it over the years, so great job there, Lenovo. Lastly, I want to talk about battery life. This laptop, despite its amazing specifications and high resolution DPI screen, can still have amazing battery life. Though to get it, you do have to run through a few hoops. Firstly, you need to make sure you're in hybrid mode, as the discrete mode kills battery. Then you'll want to switch it to 60 Hz by pressing the hotkey function in R. And lastly, you're going to want to turn that 500 nit brightness down a bit. Running this laptop at 50% brightness, streaming YouTube videos at 50% speaker volume, we managed to get over 12 hours of battery life, which is truly incredible for a gaming laptop. So that brings us to the end of this review, and I guess you can see just how impressed I've been with this laptop. Now I think you could buy any version of this laptop if you're happy. Obviously most people are going to try and get hold of the 5800H and 3070. But if you can't quite afford that, you don't need to feel sad about settling for the 5600H and the 3060, as it is still an amazing combo. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please make sure you subscribe if you want to see the further content we've got coming, and thank you for watching.